The September 4th, 2025 Des Moines City Council Committee of the Whole is now called to order. The Committee of the Whole is the council's opportunity to hear briefings from the staff on a variety of items and emerging issues. This is the time for council education, and it's an opportunity to offer input or direction to staff. Though the public is invited to attend, it's not a time for public interaction, and no formal council action will be expected. So please note that let me double check, all council members are in attendance, and Councilmember Nutting will be attending remotely. So the first item on the committee agenda here is a SAMP update, and I'm going to turn the baton over to Community Development Director Rebecca Deming.
Hi, let me go ahead and share the presentation. Give me 1 second. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
It's small, but it's, yes.
Everyone can see that okay?
No, Rebecca, can you try and do it as like a slideshow so it fills the screen? It's real small. Like maybe do view as in like whole screen or something.
I'm not sure I can see anything when I do that from this end. That's what's, let me try.
Okay, we're gonna have Tara share it, and that way
Okay,
you can just kind of say when to move on to the next slide.
perfect.
Thank you.
Are we up and sharing? Sorry. Oh, there we go.
Yes, it looks great, Rebecca.
Okay. Hi, thanks, council. I'm attending remotely as I'm on training. Let me know if you have any issues hearing me. I can go ahead and go to the next slide. The Sustainable Airport Master Plan, or SAMP, is the proposed action to implement 31 near-term projects at the SeaTac Airport. These are, in their words, to improve efficiency and access to the airport to accommodate future demand. Next slide. The FAA published the draft NEPA environmental assessment on October 21st, 2024. The comment period ended December 13th, 2024, and the city individually and as a four-city partnership responded to the environmental assessment. We have been waiting for the responses to comments and final determination and release of their final EIA, which is what we are expecting, or they could determine that there are significant impacts and prepare an EIS, which is not what we are expecting. Next slide. Once the FAA publishes the decision on the NEPA environmental, then the Port of Seattle will move forward with the SEPA process, which we are informed will be an EIS. They are estimating that the draft EIS will be published in the first quarter of 2026, and they've told us that they will give us a 30-day heads up of when that will be released. Next slide. As you know, we are in a four-city partnership through an ILA that started in 2018 in response to this SAMP in order to work together to jointly respond to this environmental process. The original ILA had expired with all the delays that came through regarding the SAMP, and the city's approved a new ILA in 2025 that had an expiration through the completion of the SAMP. Next slide. We're still working with those other cities regarding this ILA to retain a legal team with experts in these issues and a proven track record on advocating for the city's best interests and protecting our rights in relation to NEPA and SEPA options. Once a team has been identified, we will bring that to council with more information. I'll now turn it over to Anthony to discuss different legislative updates.
Will, yes, we are, okay,
slide. Okay. Um, Our legislative session will be starting in January. We do expect a variety of airport-related bills to be discussed during the session. There will be an effort to get funding back for the port packages that was taken out in the last session late in the process. There has also been talk about a variety of other bills that that could potentially see funding for local local municipalities. Details are still being looked at this point, and that would be controversial with certain jurisdictions in the area. But it is still early regarding legislation, but we're expecting that the airport will be airport-related issues will be quite hot in this coming short session. Okay.
Is that all you have, Rebecca?
Yeah, so the rest, we want to just leave time for you to ask any questions that you might have. And it was really just kind of an update. We do meet with the 4 cities on a weekly basis to kind of keep the process moving. And so really, I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Let me just add a little bit onto that. So we put this item on the agenda for a couple reasons. First, before we know it, we'll be back in airport land of issues. So we wanted to give you a timeline update, but also to let you know that the 4 cities, as Rebecca mentioned, are looking at exploring retaining counsel that has expertise with the FAA, which Rebecca mentioned, but I want to make sure you heard that. Once we know more about what that could look like, we'll bring it to you all, probably in a more closed session to talk about what that would look like, what that could mean if Des Moines was to participate. And the thought is that really that group could help guide some strategy moving forward in how the 4 cities can be successful. We additionally, Anthony mentioned it's early to tell what's going to be coming up in January, but I know already there's some indications that bills that were filed last session will come back again that will hopefully represent the city. So as Rebecca said, we wanted to brief you on sort of where we are, hear if there's any questions or kind of thoughts on our high level approach to kind of what our plan is.
So the way I wanted to organize this a little bit is first, if anybody has any clarity questions on this short presentation, but after that, so first of all, any clarity questions on the presentation? Councilmember Oxiger.
Yes, just for clarification. Anthony, you mentioned that the impact monies were stricken late in the session. Was it by the legislature or was it by the governor?
It was done by the legislature.
Okay.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. I probably should have read the thing, but you mentioned that the 4-city ILA it runs through the SAMP. Is that like a fixed date, or is it just whenever Part 150 closes, or, yeah, is there a firm, how is that defined?
It currently reads through the end of SAMP with an estimated date. It doesn't say anything about the Part 150.
Okay, but it's not a firm date. It's, in other words, if the SEPA thing, is there any way to foreshadow what the SEPA document will look like? The categories are known and so forth, just any kind of pre-engineering. That's probably the wrong term, but just any pre-research we can do on that, or is it just you wait for it?
Well, we know it'll be an EIS because we already had the determination of significance. So we know it's not gonna be just an EA or a non-significance. We do know that it'll be an EIS.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so staff is looking for direction, so I divided it up into a few categories. So there's gonna be three main questions. One is, what angle does the council want? The second is, what actions would the council consider? And the third question is, what item of these things would be at the top of your list as most effective approach? So the first question, what angle does the council want? And what I mean by that is, do you want to work through the airport committee, from the dais, advocacy with the state? What do you view as the strongest way to work this airport SAMP issue? And that's just giving direction to staff, like what should they pour into? Councilmember Mahoney, then Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
I hate to do the layup easy answer, but I think it's got to be all three.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is, I think an airport committee gives a flavor of the locality we need. The council as a whole, a lot of us have been to many of the meetings and have obtained some kind of expertise. Not some of us more than others, maybe, but the ability to kind of soundboard it out from the dais and so forth. And then, of course, we always need to leverage our legislative partners at particularly the state level, because the truth is they're the only ones that are going to get any kind of meaningful legislation that might counter some of the impacts or effects and so forth, or maybe some other options we can do to be compensated. So I think it's got to be all three. It just can't be. It has to be a tiered approach. What do you call it? Trident attack.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what was just said, but as I'm kind of looking at it, it's who interacts with who. So the airport committee interacts with the council and with the SAMP committee in the airport, and that brings the airport committee advises us on the council, and then also takes the locality or the flavor of the local issue to the airport. From the council, we interact with the airport committee, and we also interact with our legislative bodies. And then the legislative bodies interact with the port up at a higher level, and I think we also need to interact at the federal level to do that. And so I think it's got to be all three, otherwise we're not moving everything around enough, putting enough pressure out there if we're just going to focus on one, because it doesn't make sense not to push on all the buttons we can.
Real quick, as sort of you continue to respond, we are working to develop what are the right people or groups to advise us on what our strategy should be. Meaning, if, what I've heard from the council in the past is that really real mitigation that has some significance is really the goal. And so if that is the goal, we're working to sort of figure out what's the right path to get there. So with that in mind, as we tell you, right now we're exploring this sort of kind of legal heavy route. Is that information that the council would like us to first bring to the airport committee to get their feedback, then come to the council? Or is it something where you want us to check in with you all first on that strategic direction, then go work with the airport committee? If that kind of helps frame the question a little better.
Councilmember Harris.
Yeah, boy, I hate being that guy. In 96, this is like the Matrix Part 3. In 96, we had this EIS for the third runway, and it was terrible, and the existential problem is that the permitting is based on the construction project. Doesn't matter what you build, or, it does not consider the wide or anything beyond the fence line. And that's why it's so easy to permit and why there's no pushback, because there's literally no consideration of what the thing does to us. At the time, the ACC, the cities were fighting to stop the third runway, but they got the state to do this thing called a HOK, the HOK study, specifically to do original research on what would be the impacts to the surrounding communities 6-10 miles out 20 years. It's exactly what the EIS was not. Funny thing, the SAMP is exactly the same playbook. It only considers what's on the APE, the property. So I would like my colleagues to read the HOK report, and there's an executive summary. They just nailed what the long-term changes to our community would be. And my most profound wish would be to have the state pay for an analogous study, new research, because you can't talk about mitigation and compensation if you don't know what to ask for, you know, and you have to have specific research that says it's doing this to us, it's going to do this to us, and that's what the HOKE was. It's just the reason people haven't heard of it, and I'll shut up now, the reason people haven't heard of it is because it was a tool to stop the third runway. It was a great tool, but when they realized they couldn't stop the third runway, they just set it aside and didn't work on any of its long-term approach. They were completely it was an all or nothing kind of a deal for most people. The entire advocacy that the cities did, just in November of 2008, people just looked up and then said, well, you know, it's been nice. But it was gold. It's just that it's 30 years out of date. So that's just my suggestion.
So I did see our legislative advocate taking some notes. So is the goal of a study like, so in your mind, Councilmember Harris, is it at the end of that, a new study is going to recommend mitigation, or at the end of that, a new study is going to recommend stop? Or some,
there's nothing to stop. I mean, that's the thing.
Okay.
You know, but it laid out a forecast, and it said, these are the things, what it's going to do to us. And the problem is people talk about mitigations and compensation, and I'm like, I have no idea what they mean. You have to have specific things. I'm just, like the bird balls, I'm sorry to keep, but basically, you know, or trees, or there are all these projects that relate to the airport, but you have to have a legit, you know, credentialed report that says these are going to be the impacts to us economically, socioeconomically, and so you can even develop an inventory of things to ask for.
okay, understood. Okay, Jeremy, I'll get you in a second. Anthony?
JC, or Councilor Harris, with your background in this field, can you ballpark what something like that might cost? So if we're going to approach the legislature of what the ask might be?
I can tell you that it was like 350, but that's
30 years ago.
1996 money, so
Okay.
multiply by what, 2.1 or something like that, you know.
Okay.
I can tell you, I mean, the disappointing, I promise I'll just, the disappointing thing is that you helped us get that Stantec thing in 2019. That was 600 grand. I mean, the state kicked in 300 for that, and it was 72 pages, and you know, half of it refers to the HOK. They did no original research, and that was the problem. You can just ignore it if its 4-page conclusion is, gee, we really hope people move forward with original updated numbers. You know, but every page, just as one example, they went and they got actual data as to how many people actually work around the airport, and it was like a fraction of what the port says. But it's based on actual census data. It's legit.
So for more details on that, I think that would be a really good conversation for the two
done.
of you. All right?
We'll connect offline.
Great, great. Thank you so much. Jeremy, Councilmember Nutting.
Thank you, Mayor. To answer City Manager Caffrey's question, I do agree with Councilmember Mahoney and Deputy Mayor Steinmetz, but I do agree that it should, anything that is brought before the airport committee should be brought before council prior to its presentation to the airport committee. So I hope that answers your question, City Manager.
Okay, Councilmember Mahoney and then Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Well, Councilmember Nutting just pretty much took the words out of my mouth,
Okay.
especially particularly with legal representation. I see us maybe referring it to the airport committee, but in one of your board and committee reports, the city manager reports, getting an update and then making kind of getting the consensus of what action to take from there. It just, particularly with the legal representation.
So start with the council first, then report.
On that, in that
Yeah,
particular
got
case,
it.
yes.
Got
Okay.
it, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, did you have further?
Pointing out that
That we had a
Nutting had a-
hand raised.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. So what I heard is continued ILA with the legal team. That's a head nod on that. Pursue mitigation at the state level. There was a head nod on that. Pursue mitigation at the federal level. There's a head nod on that. And then litigation. Do you see any litigation route? Are you gonna, would that just come from the legal team, a recommendation for some kind of litigation at some point?
So as Rebecca said, right now what we are doing is identifying what are the right firms that can sort of protect the city's involved best interest.
Okay,
And so once we have a good handle on what that group could look like, I would like to brief the council in executive session about that, because I am sensitive to, as Councilmember Harris brought up, there is a past history in this community of going kind of the legal route. And I want to make sure I understand sort of where people are comfortable, and I want us to sort of understand what the milestones are, costs, things like that. So
okay,
we would bring you all more information once we have it, as well as a sense of, of our 4 city partners, where's everybody else at as well, because I think that's an important part of the conversation. So we would brief you all first with a lot more detail when we get that, which should be relatively soon.
okay. And then in regard to the federal interaction really at this point involves the START committee. And so I guess my question is maybe to the council, how are they feeling about that? Do they feel like our federal advocacy could work through our advocate? Or are we feeling like START is still valuable? Councilmember Grace Matsui.
I have 2 points. One, I wanted to, can I have this one? It's fine, you can leave it, otherwise we're just gonna pass it all day. 2 points. One, I think that you're meaning advisement from legal counsel rather than litigation. So litigation is something perhaps in the future, but right now you're seeking advisement,
Yep.
perhaps representation. And the second point is, I don't know that START is the best way to advocate on a federal level. I do think that lobbying is probably more within our, and from the dais and those personal relationships that electeds have with our representatives federally. So I don't know that START would be the best place for that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Yeah, I agree with the major point from Councilmember Grace Matsui, that I think advocacy and our representatives are probably the best way to have an impact on things federally. One of the things that I do want to put on people's radar, it's been pointed out repeatedly in other forums, that legislative standards that exist are outdated and are not linked to current best science, and a way to insert that concept into the regulations that do exist would be something that would be worth pursuing at the federal level. So I think that's the level at which it needs to be inserted in there.
Okay, so where does that input go? Does that go to?
So that would go to our-
Anthony, or does that, we go ahead and keep participating and start with their advocacy and bring that information while we're still participating? Where do you see that?
I would
piece
say
of
it goes to
information?
both.
Okay,
I don't think it's one place that it goes to. And I'm not, I'm not totally sure at this point where is the right pressure point, but that's certainly something that everybody needs to keep in mind and keep, sort of pushing towards that.
okay, so, for your information, what you're looking for is, what are the strongest emphasis points where you guys work? So we've heard, we've heard that we appreciate direct advocacy federally, more than the START. Also that, we appreciate our airport committee and our legal team ILA. Did I represent that well? As far as direction to staff, anybody want to add to that? Do you feel like that's what you're looking for? Councilmember Harris.
I don't know how Joe feels about it, in previous years, we have simply signed on to the port's shared agenda for lobbying, and I am not a fan of that. Their specific ask items are run directly contrary to our interests, point by point. They look very appealing, and it's a real time saver to just sign off on what they do, but everything from sound insulation on down, if you read into it, for example, they have no interest in any more funding for air quality monitoring. Literally every word, if you read carefully, is essentially just keeping things exactly where they are. Thank you.
So do we feel like that is something, now you're here at the table and you're hearing this, Anthony, do you feel like that is a task that you could add to your advocacy for us, the task of including some kind of a federal legislative priority list that matches how we feel? What do you?
Well, I think here's what I'm hearing, and I
Go
want to
ahead.
make sure
Yeah.
I'm getting the right stuff, but this is helpful. First, I'm not hearing any immediate heartburn when I tell you we're looking for legal guidance, thank you for that clarification, on strategically what's the best way to tackle this that yields us what we're looking for in the end. So I'm not sensing any immediate heartburn to us to continuing to explore that. I'm also hearing we will come back to the council first with sort of what that could look like with more details. We also have a follow-up item, I think, for Anthony and myself regarding Councilmember Harris's comments on the HOK or HOK, sorry, I'm probably butchering that, study, and like what does that look like as a legislative agenda ask? So I'm hearing that as well. And then when it comes to START, I think what I'm sensing is we're going to continue participating, but maybe it's not just a carte blanche, we're going along with everything. There maybe needs to be a more critical look, whether it's the legislative agenda or really what are their interests versus our unique ones. So high level, am I hearing the right things? Okay, sorry, Anthony, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no, great summary. And to your question, Mayor, and your comments, Councilor Harris. Yes, I do think we could look at our own federal asks that on a couple points could be different than what STARTs are. We are very fortunate to have a wonderful advocate in Congressman Smith, who is very dialed into these issues and has introduced several different pieces of legislation. Not to be pessimistic, however, but there's the expectation that will be very, very little in the way of legislation that will actually be passed by Congress. So, not to say never, but Congress is kind of going. It has seen new depths of dysfunctionality, unfortunately, and so it will be difficult to go and get real relief through federal legislation. Just trying to be realistic, but not to say that we shouldn't try. And certainly through Smith and our senators, we can put pressure on FAA to at least get these issues up front and center as well. And OnStart should also flag that they're talking about a federal fly-in as we did a few years ago to go over joint START ideas. But if Des Moines would take part in that, of course, there would be an opportunity for other discussions beyond that joint agreement as well. And that would likely be in April.
So do you feel like you? Okay, so it looks like staff feels comfortable with direction. Any other comments before we move to the next item?
Let me ask Rebecca.
Yeah, go ahead.
Rebecca, is there anything you want to get clarity on or questions on since you deal so heavily with the other 3 cities in the ILA?
I didn't need any additional clarity. Thank you.
Okay, good. The next item then is the Committee of the Whole update. So I'm going to turn that over to staff for an intro.
Yeah, this is really, I don't have any big presentation. I think you saw the agenda items. So 5 or 6 months ago, the council agreed to sort of pilot what we're doing now, a committee of the whole in lieu of the individual committees. We are checking in to see how you think this process is working and whether you would like to return to the various council committees or if you would like to continue the committee of the whole. And in the agenda item, I said we could be ready to at least see what is potentially available for committees as soon as October, but Councilmember Harris asked a question about could that be delayed. So I would say if you want to go back to committees, we can go back whenever you want. But the reason why we're checking in is, A, we told you we would, but also if the council wants to keep this model, if you find like this is helpful and beneficial, then we would want to update the protocol manual to reflect this.
So what I'd like to do then is go around the table here, council members, just with, well, first of all, any questions for clarity? Councilmember Mahoney.
So the question I have for you, City Manager, is one of the biggest drivers because of our budget constraints and taxing the staff. Over the last 6 months, what would be your assessment to the impact of staff? Has it made it much better and more easy to be functional, or do you believe there's more capacity there to go back to what it was?
From staff's perspective, I think we significantly prefer this model. It frankly reduces just the sheer volume of agendas and packets we're trying to get out the door. It is an important goal for me that we improve the quality of the packet materials you get. We've made steps to, I think, have more thorough items. We've implemented getting you all PowerPoints when they're available. We're still working on trying to get those out sooner. Adding on 4 or 5 additional committees a month is challenging for us. That being said, we work for you guys, so if you want committees, we're happy to do that. We would ask maybe instead of them meeting by default every month, they really are meeting when there's a real purpose. But we could talk to you all about that.
Okay. So if we could just go around the table, I thought a good way to do this is just express the pros and cons or whatever any comments that you have, and then a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And then when we're done, that'll be our thumbs up or thumbs down will be direction for staff. So if you don't mind, I could just start with you, Councilmember Dunning, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any problem with the way things have been going for the last 6 months. Being the chair of several committees that gets to hear the same thing on the same night. Um, I think this is for staff reasons and for council member reasons that we have all of us that get to hear the same the same product before it's brought to council, and get to ask the questions in a committee forum without any challenges. So I think we remain doing it this way.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Oxiger.
I'm fine with continuing this and taking another look at it in January when the new council seats.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
For me, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. I think there are many issues that should be looked at by a committee. We're going to hit one of them tonight. It's just, from watching for a while, it just was always, when they work well, you have people who develop a certain expertise on a particular segment of city business. And I thought the Finance Committee was extremely helpful. And I thought the Environment Committee was really helpful, but I completely take the point that a lot of stuff can be redundant. I just think the Committee of the Whole deal packs too much stuff. It's better to have a small group of people who work on that, a subset of stuff. You end up getting a better product that you can just bring before the council and, get to a clear consensus. I think it's actually tougher when it's spread out like this. I would prefer to put this off until January because we're going to have a significantly different group of people, but I would not want to change it at least until the end of the year. Thank you.
Councilmember Grace Matsui.
I think there are definitely pro features to the Committee of the Whole or Council of the Whole. I also want to acknowledge that there's probably a third or fourth or fifth option out there besides going back to what we were doing prior to this. But I don't believe that the committee structure as it worked before was the best use of everyone's time. And so I would not recommend reverting back to its previous structure without a really strong look at it. But I absolutely agree that it is something that the next council can take up.
Okay. Councilmember Mahoney.
I gotta remember to hit this button when you talk. Keep it the same, kick it down the road, let the next council decide. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Steinmetz.
Thank you. I agree. I actually think the committee system that we had before was pretty ineffective. I don't think that there was a lot of development of ideas and legislation that then was bubbled up and accepted by the council as a whole. In a bigger legislative body, committees make a difference because you have to have people that can work through the legislation before it bubbles up to the floor votes. We just don't have that big a legislative body. And when we get up to the dais, other people on the council may have ideas that we're not involved and they want to bring it in. And that's really where we need to be addressing it with a 7-member group. So I think that this is I certainly don't think the previous committee structure made much sense. I also appreciate the fact that it's just a lot for the staff to constantly prepare for it. And so I think that was taking some of that burden off the staff is well worthwhile. That being said, I do think there were particular committees, in particular the Finance Committee, that I think work through a lot of the budgetary issues, particularly sort of long-term impacts of those, and that those of us that weren't on the Finance Committee were able to get a good explanation from our colleagues about why they did what they did. And that was pretty effective, but that's a very, it was dealing with the budget, so it's not that narrow, but I think that was probably, we had some good people who were willing to put in the time and had the expertise to work through it. So if we do want to revise the committee structure, I think that there might be some room for some individual committees, but a lot less than we certainly have now. In terms of the committee as a whole, as it's working now, I think it's kind of hard to distinguish it from the study sessions. They're kind of doing the same thing. They're educating. It's an educational process for the council as a whole, and that's okay. So really, it should be part of a study session, unless we have those very small, very narrowly tailored committee responsibilities that are narrowly focused and are short-term that we can bring back. So that would be my recommendation. But for the moment, I think keeping going on the committee as a whole, and if we want to revisit this after the first of the year in the new council, maybe that's the time to take a look at it. But those are my reasons and what I think mattered.
Thank you. I crossed off a lot of things, well said by my colleagues on several issues. Considering the desires of the community and the council regarding transparency and communication, we've instituted many additional committees recently and subcommittees so that allows more public participation and decision-making in our processes. And so that added more, a reduced staff capacity. So the pro is this allowed for increase in community participation and information. The cons, though, I think was mentioned, reduced leadership amongst the council. There are no chairs. So an add for me is if we do decide to do this, and I agree, put it off until January with a new group of people, but I would recommend that the chair would rotate. That if we continued this CAL model, that the chair would rotate amongst the council members, but not the deputy mayor who chairs the CAB. So that gives everybody an opportunity, a leadership, a presiding officer position. So that would be my recommendation for leadership. So I think this model answers desires of the community leadership until there's more trust for and amongst the council. I think that specificity is awesome if you trust the expert. But if you don't trust the experts when they come to the dais, then it doesn't matter. So, but we don't have the capacity to do both right now. So I agree with just move forward until January and see what people say. So that looks like that's a
We will bring it back
recommendation.
at the beginning of 26. I don't want to scare away new people in January with too much. But yes, we'll bring it back early 26, but we'll keep this going until then.
Okay, well, we don't have anything else on the agenda for the Committee of the Whole, so we will adjourn until our council meeting at 6.